Everything you call matter is fake, and I'm about to prove it using the most mind-shattering physics discovery ever made. Right now, you think you're made of tiny balls called particles, atoms with electrons orbiting around nuclei, solid little spheres bumping into each other like cosmic billiard balls. But here's the truth that will demolish everything you believe about your own existence. Particles don't exist. They never did. What you call your body is actually a collection of invisible field vibrations organized into patterns that your brain mistakes for solid objects. You are not matter. You are a temporary arrangement of energy waves in quantum fields that fill all of space. The particles you think make up your atoms are nothing more than localized excitations in these fields, like waves on an ocean that you've mistaken for floating objects. But it gets worse. Much worse. Every particle you've ever heard of, electrons, protons, neutrons, photons, is actually just a ripple in an underlying quantum field. When physicists talk about finding particles, they're really detecting field disturbances that have been excited above their ground state. Feynman revolutionized physics by revealing this cosmic deception in his quantum field theory. As he showed in QED, the strange theory of light and matter, what we call electromagnetic interactions are really just oscillations in the electromagnetic field, creating patterns we misinterpret as particles exchanging other particles. The electron orbiting your atomic nucleus isn't a tiny sphere following a path. It's a persistent wave pattern in the electron field, a standing wave that has organized itself into a stable configuration around a disturbance in the proton field. Your entire body is made of field music, quantum harmonics playing in invisible dimensions of reality. But here's what will break your brain completely. These quantum fields aren't located in space, they are space. Every point in the universe contains every quantum field vibrating at different amplitudes and frequencies. Right now, at the exact location of your hand, there's an electron field, a photon field, a neutrino field, a Higgs field, and dozens of other quantum fields all occupying the same space simultaneously. What you experience as empty space is actually every possible quantum field vibrating at its minimum energy level. What you experience as particles are just local increases in field amplitude that create persistent wave patterns. The chair you're sitting on isn't made of particles, it's made of field excitations that have organized themselves into molecular patterns stable enough to resist deformation. When you push against a wall, you're not touching solid matter, you're experiencing the electromagnetic field repulsion between field excitations in your hand and field excitations in the wall. Nothing is ever actually touching anything else. Field patterns are interacting with other field patterns through field oscillations in the underlying quantum field system. You have never touched another person. You have never touched yourself. Field patterns have interacted with other field patterns while maintaining separation at the fundamental level. But wait, there's something even more disturbing about the nature of quantum fields in reality. According to Feynman's quantum field theory, particles can be created and destroyed, but fields are eternal and indestructible. The electron field that creates the particles in your brain has existed since the beginning of the universe and will exist until the end of time. You are not made of particles that came into existence at some point. You are made of eternal field oscillations that have temporarily organized themselves into the pattern you call yourself. When you die, the field excitations that created your body won't disappear. They'll simply reorganize into different patterns, becoming part of other field configurations throughout the universe. Your individual existence is temporary, but the fields that create you are immortal. But it gets even more mind-bending when you realize what this means for the nature of creation and destruction. In particle accelerators, physicists don't actually create new particles, they pump energy into quantum fields until the field oscillations become so intense that new stable wave patterns emerge, patterns we label as particles. The new matter created in these experiments isn't really new. It's ancient quantum fields reorganizing their energy into configurations that hadn't existed before in that particular region of spacetime. Every particle collision is really just field patterns interacting and reorganizing themselves into new field patterns. Nothing is actually created or destroyed, only rearranged at the field level. Your entire life is field patterns rearranging themselves into increasingly complex configurations until the pattern becomes sophisticated enough to contemplate its own field nature. Consciousness might be the universe's most complex field pattern, quantum field oscillations, organized into configurations capable of modeling their own field dynamics. As Feynman explored in the Feynman Lectures on Physics, this field reality explains something profound about the nature of identity. If you're made of field patterns rather than particles, then the question, what am I, becomes which field pattern am I right now? The field excitations creating your thoughts today are different from the field excitations that created your thoughts yesterday. The pattern persists, but the underlying field activity is constantly changing. You are not a thing, you are a process, a dynamic field pattern that maintains apparent continuity while the underlying field activity flows and changes constantly. But here's what really shatters your understanding of existence and identity. According to quantum field theory, the fields creating you are the same fields creating everything else in the universe. The electron field that creates the electrons in your brain is the same electron field that creates the electrons in distant stars. There is only one electron field in the entire universe. Every electron everywhere is just a different excitation of this single universal field. You and every other person are patterns in the same underlying field system. At the deepest level, there is no separation between you and anything else. You're all excitations of the same universal quantum fields. The boundaries between objects, between self and other, between inside and outside, are all artifacts of field pattern organization rather than fundamental features of reality. Right now, the quantum fields creating your sense of being a separate individual are the same fields creating every star, planet, and galaxy. You're not in the universe, you are the universe, temporarily organized into a self-aware field pattern. But wait, there's one final revelation that will destroy everything you think you know about particles and matter. The Higgs field, which gives all other field excitations their apparent mass, reveals that even the property of having mass is really just field interaction. Particles don't have mass. Field patterns interact with the Higgs field in ways that create the illusion of mass. Your body weight isn't the weight of particles, it's the strength of interaction between field excitations and the Higgs field that permeates all of space. Even the most fundamental property of matter, its massiveness, is really just field dynamics masquerading as particle properties. As Feynman understood in The Character of Physical Law, this field reality reveals something disturbing about the nature of scientific understanding itself. For centuries, humans have been trying to understand reality by breaking it down into smaller and smaller pieces, molecules, atoms, particles, quarks. But field theory reveals that this reductionist approach was looking in the wrong direction. Reality isn't made of small things, it's made of field patterns that exist at every scale simultaneously. You can't understand yourself by finding your smallest components because there are no components, only field patterns within field patterns extending infinitely in both directions of scale. Let's return to where we started. Everything you call matter is fake. Does that make sense now? You're not made of particles moving through space. You're made of space itself, quantum field oscillations that have organized themselves into patterns complex enough to believe they're made of solid particles. The illusion of particle reality emerges from field patterns interacting in ways that create stable configurations lasting long enough for brains to evolve and mistake field excitations for solid objects. Tomorrow, when you feel solid and substantial, remember you're experiencing what it feels like to be a field pattern that has become sophisticated enough to contemplate its own field nature. You are not particles. You are music, quantum field harmonics that have learned to sing about their own impossible existence as temporary arrangements of eternal field oscillations. And somehow that field music has figured out how to love, dream, create, and wonder at the mystery of being organized vibrations in the quantum field symphony that plays throughout space-time. That might be the most beautiful field pattern in the universe. But here's the most disturbing part of all. Modern physics has discovered that field patterns can exist without any underlying substance. The fields themselves aren't made of anything. They're pure mathematical relationships that have somehow learned to interact with themselves. The electromagnetic field creating the light you're seeing right now isn't composed of smaller components. It's a fundamental feature of space-time itself, a mathematical structure that can oscillate, propagate, and interact without needing to be made of anything more basic. You are patterns in mathematical relationships that have organized themselves into configurations sophisticated enough to wonder what they're made of. Quantum field theory reveals that asking what are fields made of is like asking what is mathematics made of. The question assumes a deeper level of reality that may not exist. You might be living in a universe where mathematics has learned to experience itself subjectively, where pure information has organized itself into patterns complex enough to believe they're made of substance. The field excitations creating your sense of being made of solid matter might be computational processes in a vast mathematical system that spans all possible realities. Your thoughts about particles and matter might be mathematical operations in a universal computing system that has evolved the ability to model itself. Right now, as you contemplate the field nature of reality, you're experiencing field patterns organizing themselves into configurations that can think about field patterns, an infinite loop of mathematical self-reference. Let's return to where we started. Everything you call matter is fake. Does that make sense now? You're not made of particles moving through space. You're made of quantum field oscillations that have organized themselves into patterns complex enough to believe they're made of solid matter. You are not particles. You are mathematics dreaming that it's matter, field equations that have learned to experience their own solutions. Tomorrow, when you feel solid and substantial, remember, you're experiencing what it feels like to be organized mathematics, masquerading as physical reality. And somehow, that mathematical field symphony has figured out how to love, create, and wonder at the mystery of being pure information that believes it's made of substance. That might be the most incredible field theorem ever proven.